Welcome to a conversation with a community leader, sponsored by Leadership Kitsap. And I'm your host, Cary Bozeman, and I'm the former mayor of Bellevue, Washington, and Bremerton, Washington. And my guest today is David Emmons. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing that right, David. David
Yep.
Emmons, who's an old friend of mine, by the way. I've known David for a long time, and most people that will watch this show probably known David. But David's the new president of the board. I want to get this right, David. You're the new president of the board of directors of the Bremerton Chamber of Commerce.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, well, that's great. And we'll talk a lot about that. But welcome to the show. Happy to have you here. And before we get going on Bremerton Chamber of Commerce stuff, David, where are you from and what brought you to Kitsap County?
Well, as I've told this story a number of times, I'm from a very small town in Wisconsin. My father was in the military, and so we moved all over the world. He left me in Missouri, and my sister moved out here about 40 years ago with her husband, who was on the first submarine back in the 80s. And so my mother passed away, and my father decided, he was living in Texas, he decided that he was going to move to Bremerton or St. Louis, where I was living, and he moved here to be closer to my sister. And then for my father's 80th birthday, I decided to give him his 55-year-old unemployed son for a birthday present. And so I moved to Bremerton to be closer with him. And
I'm sure he loved that.
Well, that was not the case, but he did learn to love it. And I was able to spend the last 5 years of his life with him. And that was so meaningful to me. And I turned that I love Bremerton. I think it's a great town, and I just love being here.
David, you and I share that in common. I moved here 25 years ago.
Right.
And I had spent 30 years in Bellevue, Washington, and I grew up in Seattle, but I wouldn't move from Bremerton,
Yeah.
So where were you born, David?
Actually, I was born in Verdun, France, and came to the United States. My father was stationed in France with the Army, and I came back when I was 18 months. And have lived all over the world. Spent 6 years in Germany, and I had a great upbringing. I really am. Well, I do call Ettrick my home, which is a very small town in Wisconsin. But I do really consider Bremerton my home now.
Have you been back to Europe at all?
I have. A couple of times. Last Thanksgiving, I went on a whirlwind tour with a friend of mine, and we went to 6 cities in 10 days. Wow. Thank goodness I had been to all of the cities, but the last time I was in Berlin, it had a wall running through it.
Oh my God.
And so, I'm a huge history buff and fan, and so really enjoyed learning and history. And so getting back to Europe so many years after I had lived there was a real treat.
Well, listen, that gives us some ideas about where you're from. And you're kind of like me. I was an orphan brat and moved, lived in 15 cities before I was 15 years old. And so ended up settling in Seattle. So we're pretty similar in that respect. I know, David, your career most of your career has been around fundraising and nonprofit kind of activity. What have you done, and what are some of your career moves?
Yeah, I have worked in the nonprofit world for about 25 years, and I some of my highlights are that I worked for 10 years for the St. Louis Zoo. I was the manager or the director for donor relations for them.
And so, a great job.
Oh, it was an amazing job, Cary. We were in a campaign, and everybody loves giving money to animals. And the St. Louis Zoo, yes, and the St. Louis Zoo was it was a great opportunity. I learned a lot about fundraising and about the relationship of fundraising. From
the zoo have a foundation? Is that what it was?
Yes. Yeah. So I was the marketing and public relations for the foundation. So I did all of their events. I did all of their marketing. I did all of their recognition and stewardship, and really got to know the donors, and really loved it. And then I left there foolishly, because my grass is always greener on the other side. I got recruited by a top 10 destination management company in St. Louis, MAC Meetings and Events. And I planned events for organizations. I planned the national conference for the Red Hat Society in St. Louis one year, and you've never lived until you have 2,000 senior women dancing the night away, and in flapper dresses. So it was a great opportunity, but what I really missed was the passion and the mission. And so that's where then I went back to the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and got laid off from them after they had a bad telethon. Their way of handling that was to lay all directors off. And so I was working for a friend in a restaurant and thought, I could do this anywhere. And so that's when I decided to move to Seattle, and to be closer with my dad, because he and I did not have a great relationship growing up, and I wanted that with him, and I was able to have that. So that really brought me to Bremerton, and
But, I know you and I have something in common. We were both the executive directors of the Olympic College Foundation.
absolutely.
How did that happen for you?
I was working for Anthony's Restaurants, because I wasn't 100% sure that I would stay in Seattle, because I didn't know how that was going to go. So I moved out here in my car, and so that position came open. A friend of my sister's was on the board at the foundation, and she told me about the position. So I applied for it, and instantly fell in love with Joan Hanton during the interview process. She was a great leader of the foundation, and she hired me to be the executive director. And I loved the foundation. I love what they do. I love Olympic College. They have a great relationship in this town, and they provide education for those that need it.
Well, I'm well aware of the difference in the job you did there. You did a great job at the foundation. And
thank you, Cary. I really, I think just having a passion for education and having a passion for the college and the community, that was really easy to do.
What I was always impressed with, David, when I was there, was these community colleges do so much to help kids who might not otherwise make it through college, right?
Correct.
I mean,
correct.
These are people who are really trying hard to elevate their own lives.
Absolutely, Cary.
That's a wonderful place to be working.
It really is, and I have so many students that we've provided scholarships for that have come back to me and say, David, I wouldn't have ever been able to finish my degree without the assistance that the foundation provided.
The other thing about community colleges is they're relatively affordable.
Yes, they are.
I mean, I went to the University of Washington, and I remember my tuition. I'm going to age myself here.
Right.
My tuition was $300 a quarter or something like that, and now it's probably $20,000 for a year at the University of Washington, which is a public school for that.
Correct.
So, speaking about fundraising, before we get on to chamber business, what do you think? What's your call on what COVID has done to the nonprofit world in the last couple of years?
Well, I do think that certainly nonprofits are going to have in the next future, they're going to have a challenge because they're going to have to be a little more creative on how to fund their organizations. But what I learned from my time at the St. Louis Zoo and my years of fundraising is that it's about the relationship. If someone has a strong relationship to the organization, they're still going to give. They may not be able to give as much as they gave in previous years, but they're still willing to help out the organization because
Well,
they know they need it.
a lot of most nonprofits, as you know, David, raise a lot of money on special events, and
Correct.
they've been doing those virtually the last year or so, and I guess they've done okay, right? I mean,
I think that nonprofits will be able to survive this. And many nonprofits may not look the same that they did before the COVID crisis.
I think you could say that about the whole world.
Well,
We're going to
absolutely.
get through this, but whether or not we return to, I mean, I'm not sure I'd want to own a big commercial office building in a downtown of a city right now because I think a lot of companies have said, wait a minute, maybe we can be just as efficient and as effective working out of our homes.
Correct.
And I noticed the other day, State Farm has a big regional office on DuPont out on the highway, High Five. And they said they're closing the whole thing and they're never reopening again. So,
Right.
that's, I'm sure it's going to fall somewhere in between all that. I know you know a lot about fundraising and all that, but now you've got you've been a leader in our community for a long time on various roles, but now you've got a new role as the chairman of the board or the president of the board.
Right.
The Bremerton Chamber of Commerce, which is probably one of the bigger chambers in our region. I mean, Bremerton's the biggest city.
It is.
Uh,
It is.
So talk a little bit about the role of a chamber of commerce and what they do.
Well, the role is very important because the role is to support small local businesses and how we can educate them and really give them support in doing their business. And we take that very seriously at the chamber. We have the board has worked really hard this year in trying to help our small businesses, many of which, unfortunately, are struggling with these shutdowns. I mean, our restaurants.
Wow.
Yes, our restaurants especially. And so we're trying to do things to help them so that they can sustain this next wave. The first wave was devastating enough, and now that we're going back into a semi-lockdown where restaurants have to only go back to delivery, it's really going to be tough. So we're trying to provide support and education for them. Early on, we helped those small businesses get the people.
David, are they still getting, or is that all run out, all the CARES money and that kind of thing?
The original CARES money is coming to an end. The county and the city have been very generous to the chamber to help with getting that information so that we're able to get the information about that out to people. They still are hopefully the Congress will enact some more funding for small businesses, but right now it's running out.
Did the chamber receive some of that kind of funding?
We did receive some funding. We are a 501(c)(3) organization, so we didn't qualify for the federal money because there are different levels of nonprofits, and we were one. In the next go around, Derek Kilmer has been very, very helpful with us and working with us to make sure that we are covered under that if there is some more stimulus money that comes out. But the county and the city have been very generous in helping us, and we then in turn put that money back into our small businesses so that we're able to work with them.
So for people who don't know chambers that are watching, what kind of goals do you set for like next year in the programs or projects that you want to get done next year? You're the new president of the board. Yeah. What do you want to get done next year, David?
Well, it's funny that you say that, Cary, because we had planned a strategic planning retreat for this weekend at the conference center. We were going to be in the ballroom of the conference center and each have our individual tables so that the 12 of us board members could come together and be at least in the same room. we're now, because of the governor's mandates, going to be doing it on Zoom. But we're, coming up with our goals. We know that membership is going to be a huge issue for us, because we are a nonprofit membership organization, and we have to show to our members that we have value to give back to them, and we know that that's important. So we do provide services where during the COVID we have supplied PPE. I hand delivered 30 thermostats to area businesses that had requested them, so that they could help with doing temperature checks for their.
Do you consider, David, downtown Bremerton to be kind of your area that you represent, or is it bigger than that?
No, it's bigger than that. It goes down the corridor as well. We have a lot of our members that are on the corridor as well, and
like down on Callow and that kind of thing?
Well, Callow, but then Kitsap way down into East Bremerton as well. We're working with those businesses. So
what do you think, David? I'm pretty aware of downtown Bremerton, having been the mayor of the city.
Absolutely.
What do you think are the biggest challenges we're facing down there in the next few years?
Well, unfortunately, I think that the business development that was happening with West Sound Group, Sound West Group, I'm sorry, is kind of it's being on hold because of the virus. I do think that we just did award Sound West a Pivot Award at our gala 2 weeks ago for pivoting how they, on their new building, from changing it from a hotel to a apartment model. I think that was a great pivot that they were able to do.
Yes.
And so that's really, working with those businesses to bring business back downtown.
What do you think of the future of this idea that I know Sound West and a lot of other people about Quincy Square and the reality of maybe that becoming real at some point?
At some point, I do hope that comes to fruition. I do know that I have seen the plans for Quincy Square. I've heard about the impact that it'll have for that area. It will revitalize, I think, downtown, and we're all looking forward to that because
I like city. You've been to Europe. I've been to Europe.
Right.
Half the time you sit in a street that's not a street anymore, but it's just full of shops and people are walking on it and people are sitting outside. Yeah. And I think 4th Street could be great for that. I do too. I argued when they came out with a plan to not allow cars on that part of 4th Street, but I didn't win the argument. But I think the idea is it would be predominantly pedestrian.
Correct.
Downtown. And downtowns are only going to work if people are living down there, and we're getting more people living down there.
Absolutely.
And if it's a comfortable pedestrian like bicycling and walking, that's where urban downtowns start to work. Uh-huh. So I think this whole idea of Quincy Square, and of course Quincy being the famous Quincy Jones, right. I got this right?
Yep.
The musician that lived in Bremerton as a young boy.
Absolutely.
So that'll be interesting, and I'm sure the chamber's involved with that.
We are very involved with that. We support that project. We believe in the revitalization of downtown. And Cary, I do want to add in one of the things that the chamber did for businesses during COVID was that Josh Farley came to us with this idea about the Bremer Bond. An amazing.
I bought one.
I did too. It's right here. It was an amazing opportunity for business or for individuals to contribute $100 and buy like a war bond during World War II. You bought a bond, and then area businesses gave gift certificates so that you got something for your bond. But it was an amazing opportunity to serve on the committee to award those those, almost $45,000 in Bremer bonds during the pandemic to local businesses, and to see the need that so many businesses have. And that's one of the big accomplishments that I think the chamber had this year was those.
That was a great thing. It was full of spirit. And
yes, it was.
Josh Farley's such a treasure for our community, and
absolutely he is.
So
absolutely.
That was great. Let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the Bremerton Chamber. First of all, are there other chambers in Bremerton?
No, we're the only chamber. We do have a downtown business association, and John Morrissey from Kitsap Credit Union is the president of that, but he also happens to be the incoming chair of the Chamber of Commerce. So he and I work really closely together, and they do serve different purposes, and the Downtown Association is hoping for a designation that will help them receive funding from to help them with their efforts. But
there is kind of a little tax that cities have adopted for that sort of thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's important to work together and to not compete against each other.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about the Bremerton Chamber itself. How big? What's your budget? How do you finance yourself?
Okay. Well, as I said earlier, we are a membership organization. We have 1.5 staff members, so we're extremely small staffed.
You have a CEO, right?
Yeah, we have a president CEO, and that's Denise Fry.
Right, that's right. She's a go-getter. She's a hard worker.
Go-getter, and I love working with Denise. She is an amazing, amazing leader. She also has a fundraising background, so she understands the opportunities and the importance of bringing in funds. We have a relatively small budget of about $300,000 a year, and most of that comes from either sponsorship. And we are blessed to have some amazing community sponsors, business organizations sponsoring our events, and then membership. And that's really how we get our funding.
Well, I know I'm a commissioner for the Port of Bremerton, and we're a member of the Bremerton Chamber of Commerce.
Absolutely, you are.
And proud to be. How many members do you have, and what does it cost? What does it cost to be a member of the chamber?
Well, there's different levels of joining the chamber. I'm an individual member, so that's $100 a year, and it goes from $250 to $2,500, depending on the level of membership that you have and the size of business that you are. But we really try to give as much back to the businesses as we can.
Well, I think this is my personal opinion, every business ought to try to be a member if they can. It's important, and you guys are doing something that no one else is doing, which is working with small business community by and large. Is the Navy involved at all in the chamber?
They are involved. They do support the Chamber of Commerce. They do have a seat on the chamber board that they have the opportunity to have someone representing the Navy, because 100 years ago, that's really how the Bremerton Chamber got its charter, was that it came together to support local businesses that were able to work with the Navy when they were building PSNS. So that's really how it was done. And I learned this morning that Bill Gates' grandfather was actually the treasurer of the chamber when that charter was signed.
Yeah. When I was mayor, I had Bill Gates Sr. over a couple. I've known the Gates family because when I was mayor of Bellevue, they had Microsoft there, and I got to know those guys pretty well.
Yeah.
But he loved Bremerton. He was born here. I always kept trying to think of something we could do that would be a significant thing with their name on it.
Correct.
I had some ideas pop in and out of my head, but I never kind of pulled that off. So,
Yeah.
hey, listen, David, this program's about community leaders, identifying them and listening to what they have to say. You're a leader. How would you describe your leadership style?
I am extremely collaborative. I believe that working together with different groups and different individuals is the way to go. No man can do it by themselves. I certainly have not had the success in my career and in Bremerton if I thought that I was doing everything by myself. I surround myself with incredible people and really help them and give them the tools that they need to be able to do their jobs and what they're doing. And I think that's really important.
I always believed in surrounding yourself with people that knew a lot more about things than you did. So,
Absolutely.
And in closing here pretty quick, David, but I know you're a big supporter and a bit on the board of Leadership Kitsap.
Absolutely.
And just a short, your short view of the contribution they're making.
You know, I am.
And their director, Katie Water.
Oh, I love Katie. In fact, Katie and I were in the same Leadership Kitsap team together. So I've known Katie my entire time in Bremerton. Class of 14. Katie will laugh at that. You know, that organization has a huge place in my heart because I really believe in their mission. And it's, you know, everybody was like, when I would try to talk to them about I already know about leadership. I already know about, it's not that's what you learn from Leadership Kitsap. It is really developing the relationships with the businesses and the organizations that come and talk to the organization. I mean, and that's really what it is about.
Well,
and
communities are made up and depend on leaders, not just. Yes. I mean, a leader could be the person who decides to coach the girls' soccer team, or be the Boy Scout person, or whatever.
Yeah.
Those people are all out there making a difference and creating change, and that's why I know you love Leadership Kitsap, and I love Leadership Kitsap, and they're the sponsor of this show. So, and you've made a big difference in that organization, David. Well, I know that. So,
thank you, Cary. I appreciate that because they are important.
Listen, David, you're an easy interview because you've got so much up in your head and your mind. You've done so many interesting things, and you've made you are truly a community leader. And it's been my honor to have this conversation with you today. So thank you, David. Stay safe and stay well, my friend.
I will. It was a true honor to talk to you today, Cary.
Leadership Kitsap is our community's civic leadership program. Leadership Kitsap fosters and empowers educated, prepared, and engaged community leaders. For over 25 years, we have cultivated leaders that work collaboratively to create positive change, dedicated to making our community a better place to work and live. We expose our class to Kitsap's leaders across public, private, and nonprofit sectors. We're happy to bring many of the conversations with these leaders to you. Strong leaders build strong communities.